wait before we start so we can watch Paul dance. Hey everyone, welcome project managers. I'm Kelly Schockler, and I want to let you know you're in the right place today as we share our latest episode of My Project Hell, where for the next 20 minutes, we're going to do our best to bypass the cliche corporate project advice and talk about some real solutions for real project problems.
And I'm Paul Thompson. And like all good things, right? This webcast has somewhere a beginning, a middle, and an end. In the beginning, we're going to talk you guys through some of our thoughts, our ideas, our project hacks. We call them hot topics. They're designed to help people manage through some of the tough times. In the middle, we've invited a real project manager who's having a real problem into the coach's corner for some mentoring, and hopefully we'll be able to give him or her a few ideas on how to get through it. Now, we encourage you guys, use the chat session down below to join the conversation. And if you do have any questions for Kelly and I, put them in the Q&A section. And if we have time, we'll try to get to them. Kelly, how are we looking for our hot topic today?
I thought that was your job. No, I'm kidding.
Could be.
I'm kidding. The hot topic is something known as not my circus, not my monkeys. And I remember when I first met you, Paul, in the place we were both working at, which shall remain nameless. We sat next to each other. Our cubes were next to each other in that nameless place. And before I ever met you, I saw this saying on a piece of paper hanging on your wall, or maybe it was on a whiteboard. I can't remember, but I had been having this circus monkey day, and I saw that, and it just made me chuckle. And I knew I had to meet you. Whoever sat at that desk, I had to meet them. And so I did a little research on this and found out this is actually an old Polish saying, which I don't know if you knew. I'm half Polish. My dad was full on Polish. And I was thinking I would have loved to have had to been able to say this saying in Polish to my dad when I was in trouble. Not my circus, not my monkeys, Dad. If he asked me to do something I didn't want to do. But in my research, I also found that the rough translation in Polish it means I mind my own business. I don't get involved with anything that doesn't concern me. And I think that we also here in the United States use that saying with that meaning. I mind my own business, but I feel like sometimes I've heard it used where we stretch the meaning. We've sort of Americanized it to push back on things that we don't want to do, a way of just waving off work, what we don't want to take responsibility for. I mean, I've heard this mantra used or thrown down like, I don't care. Have you experienced that?
Yeah. I think the simple interpretation that often gets pushed out there is not my problem, right? But for me, it's really about knowing your boundaries. Because if you know where your boundaries are, then you can say yes or no to an issue and a problem. You get to decide once you understand, is it on your side of the fence or not? And going back to that project that we shared, or that client we shared.
That shall remain nameless.
Sure. For everybody else, I had been asked to come in and step in and get a very large, complex project out of a ditch. And as the program manager, I had half a dozen or so PMs reporting to me. But it seemed like every day, 2 or 3 of them would bring me their questions, their problems about project management stuff in their work stream. And that seemed a bit odd because I knew that the previous program manager, she was very controlling, right? And she required everything to go through her. I knew that this is not the way to scale this project. I was not going to be the hub of everything. So as Kelly points out, up on my board went, not my circus, not my monkey. And it wasn't to say not my problem. It was to help get the other project managers to start thinking, is this really Paul's problem? Or should I be solving it as a project manager within my work stream? Because I needed to get them to think about, you guys now have been given ownership of your work streams. You need to own the problems. I'm here to help if you can't manage through them. But these were top-notch project managers that had just gotten into some bad habits. So I was trying to help them find their boundaries.
Yeah, good point. I know when we're observers and we're watching someone else's circus go on and we're thinking, thank God that's not my circus and those aren't my monkeys. But I mean, one final thought I want to share on this is that, even if it's not your circus and your monkeys, what if that other ringmaster or project manager just could use a little help with what they're doing? And I just think that it's a good idea to evaluate if you might be able to thoughtfully and with boundaries help that ringmaster with their monkeys, a little at the elbow support. What if you offered to step in the ring with them, but you had your boundaries about, how much monkey interaction are you committing to, right? Because I think we can all use that. And also as a PM saying, I'm the ringmaster here and this is out of control, and going to another ringmaster and saying, hey, how can I get some help here? Because this is out of control and I need help with my boundaries.
Right. Help wrangling monkeys. And it's funny because this same thought is pretty much, you can find it through time. Back in the early 20th century, for example, Robert Frost, he used to write poetry about complex social interactions, but he wrapped them in simple rural life. And one of his most famous sayings was, good fences make good neighbors. Very much like Not My Monkey, right? He wasn't saying, keep to yourself, I never want to see my neighbors. It was just, we each need boundaries. We have gates on our fences, we let people in and out, but it's our choice because we know where the boundaries are. We know that our neighbor needs help, let me open the gate and go over there. Or I need help, let me open the gate and come in. So it's an old topic that's been around. It's got a lot of people always thinking about how to define their boundaries and how to let people in and out. All right.
Thanks for sharing that poem. I'm going to go look that one up. I thought it
Robert
was just an
Frost.
adage, but it came from a poem. So
Yeah. So I know we want Becky to be here. How are we doing at getting Becky into the webinar?
there she is. Hey,
There's
Becky.
Becky.
Hi, everyone. Sorry,
It worked.
set up here. Oh, we're back. Here we are.
We're back. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thanks for inviting me to come chit chat today.
Yeah.
So
So
I'd love to have you.
I understand you're having, some stuff that you're trying to work through. And you've given us some of the background, but why don't you help everybody understand what's the issue that you're really struggling with?
Yeah.
See if you can't start there.
Well, it's a really fun problem, challenge, if you will. And I think it's one that is very relatable to a lot of people right now, because it certainly is exacerbated by this virtual environment that we're all working in. So I have an opportunity to work with a client on a very big corporate initiative that will last the next 3 or 4 years. And that initiative will involve a lot of different stakeholders within the organization and externally within the outside the organization. And we'll need to involve them both in the planning process and in the execution process. So I'm interested in your take and your expertise on how do I bring this diverse set of stakeholders together to create momentum around a common vision for this project? How do I keep them engaged in that common vision and also get the work done? And I think all of that is exacerbated by the fact that we're all working virtually and not having a lot of the tools that I'm used to using, certainly not the least of which is in person, to help coalesce a common idea and keep people aligned along that common idea. So I would love your expertise on ways you've achieved that, or tips, techniques, and tools that I might take advantage of going forward.
All right. So you mentioned that you would normally do a lot of in-person type activity. What sort of activities, if you were in person, would you be doing that have worked for you in the past?
Yeah, early on, I would say in a planning process or in a, kind of an idea creation process, I really believe that in person helps cement, ideas in a much more meaningful way. It's harder to check out if you're in the same room with folks.
You mean
Like,
I can't just
do this, whatever. And likewise, so I think that, I mean, I just really value in person, and I
Right.
value that
For your
kind of
relationship
face-to-face time.
building and getting
Yeah.
everything going.
And
Is it-
because this is a complex project, I think making sure that all voices are heard and meaningfully heard is really important too. And I
Mhm.
often wonder if Zoom, for as great as it is, does it really create or reduce those barriers to ensure people feel heard?
Mhm. Mhm. Okay. Any weird issues like, well, we don't really have much of a
Mm.
budget, we're understaffed? Is it the usual project, do it on a shoestring, or are you feeling like you've got the resources, it's just how to bring them all together? Help picture that.
Yeah, maybe I would answer that question a little differently than budget.
Okay.
I think the resourcing constraint would be that, like all of us, my client, and I suppose to a certain extent, we're juggling a lot of different activities, and work is just harder these days because
Mhm.
of kind of the virtual nature, and also our personal lives create a little bit more complexity in the world. And so I think for me, the challenge, the probably the broader challenge that we're experiencing with this opportunity is resource constraint. People feeling like they have the bandwidth to even take this on, feeling like they have the bandwidth to contribute, not just to the planning process, but to an ongoing process. So frankly, one of the most important steps in this process, I think, is going to be helping them feel really excited about being a part of this work, and keeping them engaged so that they don't just feel like it's one more task they have to
Mhm.
take on, but that it really is something that's important to
Okay.
them and that they'll see value in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds like you got a good challenge. Kelly, this is right up your alley. What do you?
Well, okay, just so to understand correctly, you've got all these diverse stakeholders. You want to create common project vision with them, keep the momentum going with engagement, even though you've got, some constraints on the remote thing. And I love that you're thinking about this. This is a really smart thing to be thinking of right now before you get going, because I really think thinking about creating common project vision, when you can do that, that's sort of a keystone or an important um, thing that can bring people together and create that momentum that you're looking for, because you've got that buy-in, right? But yet we miss that all the time because we're just in such a darn hurry to hurry up and get out of the gate into our project and get going on the planning, right? So we know if you don't have buy-in from your stakeholders, you can just kind of kiss the project success road goodbye. And second, momentum is often at its apex right at the beginning of a project. People are thinking, finally, this project to get the global llama peace initiative launched that we've been waiting for 10 years, it's happening. And then, oh, wait, I have to do something, right? It falls off. So, I mean, from the experience, from my experience, I feel like it's leveraging how you come out of the gate with your stakeholders. How do you create that opportunity for the common vision to be birthed? And so part of creating that opportunity, even though it has to be virtual, right, which I know is less preferential, but at your project kickoff, bring something that they can respond to,
Mm.
something that you tee up, that it's a draft vision goal outcome that you bring, and you've collected this information, maybe that pre-work that you do from some key stakeholder
Mm.
interviews, right? And then you get that draft and you bring it, and this doesn't have to take hours and hours. You can literally do some human-centered design processes, which I can share with you
Mhm.
offline, to get this teed up rather quickly and agilely. So that's something I'm thinking about, that I would do.
I think that's a great suggestion. I had a colleague, if you will, describe to me the power of co-creation, and it occurs to me what you're talking about, Kelly, really speaks to enrolling people through the act of co-creation. And so I was taking notes, which is why I was looking down as you were talking, but bringing something for them to react to and also contribute to, I think sounds like a really smart thing to achieve. Do you suggest that that's something like a project charter? Do you suggest that that's something more creative or inspiring? Can you give me some suggestions?
Yeah, I think it's definitely those pieces are part of the project charter, but really taking it out of that really structured, robotic kind of business thing and making it more relatable and human
Mm.
centered, so that you're inviting like you said, people into the creation process. I just want to mention Liberating Structures, great free resources to check that out. Luma Institute is great on design thinking processes. Yeah, those are just a few resources that I have had success with.
What was the first one that you mentioned? I'm sorry.
Liberating Structures.
Thank you.
And I'll jump in here because Kelly's going right down the same path that was going through my head, right? We use the term guiding principles. And that's where we'll get together with the senior leadership ahead of time and, you know, work with them to create those guiding principles for the project. Because, a giant complex project, you're not getting those senior leaders very often. But the guiding principles is their way of continually contributing through, right? Anytime people are bringing up issues, well, let's put that against our guiding principles. Does it match up? Is this where leadership wanted us to go? And we get kind of short, pithy sayings, right? For us on a data center move, it'd be like for like, right? You're going to move this just like it is today. We're not upgrading. We're not, it's a like for like. Or it might be, stakeholders are informed and it's apparent that they're with us, right? That's one of the principles. So anytime we start going, well, you got to communicate with them, and they're like, why? Well, because our guiding principle from leadership is don't forget to talk to people. So that really helps. And then one of the ways, because I know, Zoom, if you get 30 people on a Zoom call, right? 4 of them are there. The rest, we've found that breaking it down into a lot of smaller, either one-on-ones or small groups initially, and running our paper route, right? So if we have some decisions that need to be made in a big meeting, we're going to go and talk to them, and they're 5-minute meetings ahead of time, right? With everybody, get them on board, get their feedback, because the last thing we want is 30 people in a room giving us feedback, because then you get into the politics of, well, Jan's not for this, so I'm not going to be for this because I need Jan's support on my other initiative. So do the paper routes, meet with folks one-on-one or in small groups, get their buy-in. Also make sure that you hear and incorporate what they ask, right? So when you present it at the meeting, you can be, hey, we've got this direction we're taking. And Jane, just like you and I talked about, we've included your 4-step process to make sure that we don't leave HR out of this. And so they hear that and they know, okay, this becomes not a rubber stamp, but it does become more of we're affirming that we've already talked about it and agreed to it. And now you don't have 30 people arguing and you're trying to wrangle them over a
So
video.
Paul, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute. I totally disagreed. Our first disagreement. Yay! Thank you, Becky. I mean, I don't disagree. I just think it's an and, it's not an or. It's completely doable to get people in a room and quickly and agilely get opinions without melting down into a political heap or emotional heap. It's done every day. And as someone, if Becky's just solo on this, doing multiple meetings with a lot of people is going to be really difficult. So maybe it's a mixture of both. I don't know, but 2 approaches.
I actually think what you just said is, as I'm kind of internalizing the recommendations from Paul, I could see actually doing I love that phrase. I've never used that before, paper routes. It totally resonates to me. I'm going to steal that. Because there actually are some within each division or department group, if you will, there are some key influencers that I think a paper route conversation makes a lot of sense. And perhaps some of those other sticky wickets who are the chirpers on the conversations or on the calls, making sure that they're on the paper route would also make sense too. So that, to your point, Kelly, when you get in the room, maybe it's not that I've talked to every single person, but I've talked to the chirpers and I've talked to the key influencers. That seems like a really smart strategy too. Yeah.
And it's an Paul, and for sure.
Yeah. I also wanted to say, Paul, that what you said about the guiding principles really resonated to me as well. We actually are just in the process of developing those guiding principles, but something that I think you said makes a lot of sense, which is coming up with kind of those key quips or key sayings.
Pithy sayings that, real tight, and then as the PM, you get to interpret them kind of the way you want them to be interpreted down the road.
Yeah. You know, Rick just made a comment. I was just seeing the chat about it depends on the organization and the people in the room. For sure,
That's
that
right.
is true. And I think this approach for this particular client will be different than another client where I might have something similar. But I definitely can see a paper route in some form or fashion being pretty beneficial on this one.
Good.
There's one more thing I wanted to mention, Becky, and that's inviting stakeholder feedback by creating channels for that feedback. You know, whatever mechanism you choose, just make sure it's based on what they need. So maybe that's, you know, making a form in your collaboration tool. Maybe there's a project forum or discussion board. Maybe you have project stakeholder office hours, even if it's 15 minutes, or a dedicated email inbox for the project. Just some avenue or channel that you can get a free flow of stakeholder feedback throughout the project.
That's great. I love that.
It's good way to find out their why, which can kind of emerge later down the road.
And potentially give them a safe space to have a conversation that they don't want to do in front of other people.
Exactly. Hey, we're just about out of time, so let me kind of wrap things up here. It sounds like, you know, Becky, you might have one or two takeaways that are going to help, so that's awesome. Looks like you can run your paper out, get your guiding principles, make sure you're getting your feedback, and then, you know, Kelly gave you some real good tools for sort of getting that collaborative information pulled out of everybody. Hopefully, you know, in the weeks to come, you'll give us a note back. Let us know how this works. Help us learn from this as well. All right.
Thank you for that opportunity, and thanks for the great guidance. I would say I like project management. I'm pretty good at it, but I am certainly not an expert. So your expertise is really helpful. Thank you.
Well,
We like
10,000
having you on.
hours.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show. And just know that by agreeing to come on and share your project hell, that you're paying it forward to other project managers. So
That's right.
thank you. So Paul and I want to extend an invite to all of you too to be on this webcast. So send in your short recap of your situation and your question to myprojecthell@gmail.com. And we don't have time for Q&A today, Paul.
I
think we
terrible.
gotta move on here.
But I know Kelly and I did have fun. Becky, thank you so much. You guys can catch replays of this on our YouTube channel. My Project Hell episodes get put up there every week. And if you do want to help participate, hit us up for joining in the Coach's Corner. And we do have available on My Project Hell's website 30-minute free consultation with Kelly or I if you need to talk through some things that are really kind of have you struggling right now.
And on our next show, we're going to unpack the hot topic of the impact of consistency and leadership during tough times and crises. I think a lot of us have something to say about that based on this last journey here this year. And we'll feature another intrepid project manager in our Coach's Corner. Maybe it's one of you listening right now. And a quick reminder, take a few minutes to fill out the survey at the end of the session or in the link in the post-show email. We'll see you next time.
All right. Have fun, everybody.